Welcome back to another episode of Spilling the Tea with Dr. Hendrix.
And Gabriel D.
That's me.
And Lava Lee is taking a break, as we've talked about in the last couple of videos.
She's reading another book.
She is. She highly recommends The Machinery of Life if you're interested in cellular biology or microbiology. Very interesting stuff there. But today we're not talking about that. Today
No.
we're going to talk about something that we've touched on in previous
Yes.
videos. It's going to be the myths of douching.
Yes, we talked about douching before, but today we're talking about the misconceptions around douching.
Yeah, so if you're looking for a more thorough video to review all things douching, we have some of those from
Yes.
previous videos, but this one's going to be highlighting the most common myths and, making sure that you understand what you're getting yourself into, if it's appropriate for you, and how it can be a healthy and safe option if you're looking to increase hygiene practices before anal sex.
Absolutely. Let's get into douching.
Let's get into it.
Number 1, anal douching is necessary before any anal activity.
While some prefer to douche before anal sex or activities for additional cleanliness, it's not medically necessary. Majority of the time, the rectum is already empty, and a successful bowel movement is usually all you need to clear out any material that could be remaining. And of course, if you're not having normal or regular bowel movements, this could be more of a concern. But in general, anal douching is not necessary or required before any activity in that area.
However, it's important to keep your bowel movements regular.
Yeah, so things like fiber supplementation can be really helpful. You want to address your diet. If you're having inconsistency in bowel movements, it's likely to be due to your diet. So making sure you have green leafy vegetables, lots of fiber. And again, we also want to consider for those that are douching regularly, you can overdo it. So something we'll get into a little bit later as well.
Number 2, anal douching is completely safe and has no risks.
So anal douching does carry its own potential risks. It can increase the risk for irritation, inflammation. It can actually cause anatomical changes if done too much in the rectum as well. And of course, it can also increase the risk for infections in some cases. This is because repeated use of douching can actually damage the natural bacteria we have in our colon and throughout our gut. And so we want to make sure that that's preserved because that's actually what prevents bad bacteria from coming in and causing havoc. So we're getting into more details with later myths, but in general, you can overdo it, and that's something you want to consider.
Number 3, using any liquid is fine for anal douching.
So not all liquids are equal when it comes to douching. There are some that are going to be considered safe, like water or normal saline, and then you want to be considerate of any type of harsh chemical. Things like soaps, detergents, anything with a scent can potentially irritate or inflame the lining of the mucosa in the anal cavity and anal canal. So you want to make sure you avoid any of those harsh chemicals. Again, that's going to cause more damage than good. There's also certain chemicals, like if you were to buy an enema from an over-the-counter, pharmacy, that have things inside them that actually promote diarrhea or irritation on purpose to remove excess stool. These are not something you want to consider when douching. That's going to make a very difficult process for you. So just stick to water or normal saline.
Number 4, douching cleans out all the bacteria and keeps you healthier.
So the rectum actually contains a lot of bacteria that are beneficial for our health. These are the good bacteria that fight off any invaders or foreign bacteria that can result in infection. These bacteria are also really important with how our body digests food and gets all the nutrients out of the stool before it is ready to go bye-bye. And so you do want to keep that bacteria there. So overdoing douching can actually remove some of that essential and healthy bacteria, increasing your risk that foreign bacteria can come in and cause an infection, or it may even result in things like changes in your digestion. So you want to consider avoiding anything that's going to damage or disrupt that bacteria or your natural flora.
Absolutely. Some bacteria are good for you, right?
Exactly. And your rectum does a great job of keeping that balance on its own. Of course, occasional douching is okay, but when you're doing it too often, that's when you're going to make a disruption in that natural flora, which can result in some bad side effects.
Number 5, everyone should douche in the same way.
So each person's body is completely different, and everyone's going to respond to douching in a different way. There's different methods and techniques that are going to work for one person that may not work for another. So just because you've tried it and maybe that particular technique didn't work for you doesn't mean that not all the other ones will. Something to consider, trying different options. We talk about the different options in previous videos, so take a look at those. But don't expect that everyone's going to respond the same way just because you've read a specific technique is worked for one person.
Everybody's different.
Yeah.
And what is the proper technique for anal douching?
So in general, the way you move your body, the way you are standing or sitting or where you're located, that's going to be dependent on what your preference is. But two main things you want to consider. Number one is the equipment you're using. So there's many different types of douches you can purchase. Some have very large bulbs, some have very long sort of arms or appendages. Personally, I recommend a very small bulb and a very small appendage. That way it does not overshoot the fluid too far. Your rectum is not very deep, so you just want to try and clean that area out. Pushing water too far beyond the rectum is going to result in things from your colon going into your rectum, making it very difficult for you to empty it out. So make sure you're not overdoing it with the fluid. And then the fluid choice, as we mentioned, you want to use water or normal saline. Anything with harsh chemicals in it is going to be counterproductive and may result in diarrhea or irritation. So keep it plain with the water or the saline and choose the right bulb and equipment for you.
Absolutely, because instead of preparing for anal sex and anal intercourse, you might make things worse.
Exactly. It's all going to be important for those options to make sure you're doing what's right for you.
Do you have a quick step-by-step process you can provide us for douching?
Absolutely. So number one, you want to prepare the correct equipment. As we discussed, finding the right equipment for you is going to be essential. Number two, you want to consider lubricating that equipment to make sure that it's ready to be inserted. When it's ready, of course, you're going to need to first put some liquid in there. You want to choose the right liquid. So water or normal saline, and try to have that as close to your body temperature as possible. Really cold water or really hot water is going to inflame or irritate the tissue in the rectum. So making sure that that's close as body temperature as possible. When you insert it, again, make sure that there's lubricant there to avoid friction or irritation. Push the fluid in. You can allow it to sit for a couple minutes, or when it feels like it's time to expel the liquid, do that, and then you're ready to go. As long as you are seeing the water run clear, so to speak.
And don't overdo it.
And don't overdo it.
And so what are some recommendations and precautions when douching?
So you want to monitor the frequency of how often you're douching. Of course, this is not something you want to do multiple times in a week. I always recommend people consider it as either a last-ditch effort to ensure things are clean or a special occasion, but doing it repeatedly is going to have consequences that will add up. If this is a problem for you, there may be something going on with your gut health, and a good time for you to reflect on what you're eating and making sure you're having normal bowel movements.
It's one of the moments that we talk about diet and how it's important to keep our gut healthy.
Exactly.
And what should we look out for with our colon health?
So it's important to recognize how your body is passing bowel movements, and this is a good indicator of how healthy your colon is. So if you're having repeated diarrhea or loose bowel movements, or maybe you don't pass bowel movements for multiple days, these are all abnormal signs, and that maybe there's something else going on. So talk to your primary care doctor. It could be as simple as just adding more fiber into your diet, or maybe a stool softener. Maybe there's something else going on. But you want to identify the cause so you can ensure your colon is as healthy as possible, so you don't have to rely on douching as an option to keep yourself clean before sexual activity.
You talk about signs. Are there any signs to watch out for when douching?
Absolutely. So if you notice any pain, any irritation, if something feels off or doesn't feel right, especially throughout the process of douching, this is likely a sign either you're douching too often or maybe there's something else going on. Not only do I recommend avoiding douching at that time, but maybe consider not proceeding with anal sex until you have no discomfort or any issues in the area. Of course, you want to talk to your medical provider if this is something that doesn't improve or continues.
There are other alternatives to anal sex.
That's
true. You can consider mutual masturbation.
Yeah.
You can consider
oral sex.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's other videos we talk about those things. So take a look at those if you want further information there. But yes, there are alternatives if you're not feeling well in that area until you're healed and ready to get back into it.
And you can still have fun.
You can still have fun.
What do most medical providers recommend regarding anal douching?
So most medical providers are going to recommend against anal douching because there are so many risks involved, and most people may overdo it or do it too frequently. So in general, they're always going to typically recommend that you try a more safe alternative, like ensuring your diet is rich in fiber or healthy vegetables and leafy greens, and that you're avoiding any sort of trigger or factor that can irritate the lining of your GI system or contribute to a poor bowel movement. So dietary changes and lifestyle changes, making sure you're staying well hydrated, are usually going to be what a medical provider would recommend, only because there are risks associated with anal douching. While they're not severe risk, especially if you're doing it randomly or less often, it's more so if you're doing it too often that those risks are going to be more detrimental.
Is there a particular diet that is recommended?
Absolutely. So a well-balanced, fiber-rich diet is always going to be the most important thing to consider. If you are lactose intolerant, you certainly want to avoid any lactose or consider over-the-counter supplements that aid in lactose digestion. But really avoiding anything that triggers stomach upset is going to be the main diet you want to follow. But of course, trust your own body, trust the process. Your body works day and night to keep your rectum and your GI system clean and clear. And if you're not helping or aiding that system, there's other things that could happen to your colon beyond just the need for anal douching. So consider to do what's best for you, what's going to reduce any irritation to your GI system. And of course, if you have other questions about anal douching or have heard myths, we want to hear them. So please leave them in
Yes.
the comments below. We would love to hear from you. If you have any questions about this video or for a future video, that's what we're here to do. So please, again, let us know any issues or concerns you want to talk about, any comments or questions you have about this video.
Please let us know in the comments. Keep engaging. We'd love to hear from you. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to the channel. It's important to us. And like the video if you want. Share, post, drop a pen.
Yeah.
Do whatever you like.
Exactly. We look forward to seeing you at another video next week. But until then, we'll see you later.
See you later. Bye.